Yo, what's going on, guys? Kaoiji here. So there's a couple things I'm going to make as a disclaimer of this video. Frigg is the next banner unit coming to global. It is not Claudia, it is not Cobalt B, it is Frigg. Now, this is important because a lot of people may not have a lot of resources at this moment because they were pulling for Nemesis. If you pulled for Nemesis, don't worry, your Volt teams are set. If you wanted an ice team and you were waiting, then Frigg is going to be that character you are waiting on. So let's talk about Frigg, the Simulacrum that you're going to want to pair up with her, and then the matrices and all of her other abilities and traits. So Frigg is like the premier ice DPS for a lot of teams, including the Chinese servers. There will be some differences between the global and the Chinese versions. That's to be expected. One of the big changes that we can expect right now is one of the ones that's rumored, and that's she might get ice elemental resonance. That's going to make Frigg not only even better than she already is, it's going to allow for different team compositions. Now, you might be wondering, what does that even mean? Well, that means you can use her right now straight out the box if that's the case. Kind of like how you were able to use Nemesis straight out the box. Now, she comes with a skill by the name of Frozen Domain, and this is where you're going to be like, oh man, why wouldn't I have her, and why would they give her ice elemental resonance? Because this skill is just already busted. Anyway, it's after using a weapon skill, her weapon skill specifically, a large ice field will be placed at your position lasting 25 seconds, and inside that ice field, dodges will not be consumed while using Frigg's weapon, and you will gain the effect of Frozen Domain 1, which is when you're using ice weapons in general inside that field, you increase your ice attack by 15% and your shatter by 25%. This is already incredibly strong because then you can pair this up with someone like Tsubasa, because at C1 Tsubasa winds up getting her ability, which is grant a stack of sharp arrow each time the arrow is fired by a dodge attack that hits the target, and each stack increases your damage by 5% for up to 15 seconds, and this stacks up to 3 times. You can actually swap weapons in this case and then buff another weapon. So if you go back and you use this in combination with Frigg, you are boosting your attack damage by 30% if I'm doing the math right, and that's actually insane. And be reminded that I'm talking about attack stat, not final damage. Those are two different calculations worth of damage that I'm not going to be getting into in this video. Now, Frigg has incredible advancements like her advancement 1, which is you gain a frost stack point every time you deal X amount of damage while inside the frost domain. Up to 10 points can be accumulated at level 1, and while your frost domain ends, depending on how many frost points you have, you will deal X amount of your frost attack, then times that by 95% of blast damage to all enemies within that frost domain. This can be detonated for a lot of damage after 25 seconds because more than likely you're gonna hit all 10 of those stacks because of just how quickly she attacks. Even if you were to switch over to another character, you can switch back to her and that's it. And then basically the only time you're using frost points is if you get knocked out of your frost domain. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that she has really good stats when it comes to her actual normal attack, her aerial discharge, her soaring slash. All of these modifiers are incredibly strong, and because she's so fast attacking, even if they nerf her for whatever reason, for the global side like they did Nemesis, it's not going to change anything, kind of like it didn't change anything for Nemesis, and that's just the thing. And then when you have her dodge, she can do a multi slash, which is just even better. She has her skill, which is already going to do a lot of damage, and like we were kept talking about, does the ice, frost domain, and then her discharge is even sicker. It clears all debuffs for you and then dashes forward when you swap to that weapon and then deals damage. So it's a gap close, it's a cleanse, and you launch enemies into the air that way. This is going to be incredibly strong in things like PvP, most PvE content, and the like. Even more so with her Simulacrum trait right now, she increases frost attack by 1.5% every 3 seconds upon entering battle, and that stacks up to 10 times. Now, this does have a little bit of a ramp up time, but realistically, that's incredibly strong. That is 15% frost attack once you enter battle. And then the other cool thing is that once you get the level 2 version of that at 4,000 points for the Simulacrum traits, you increase frost attack by 2.4% every 3 seconds, and it stacks up to 10 times. That's 24% frost attack that lasts for 5 seconds, and this does refresh. And then in addition, you gain hyper body, where you become immune to control effects while you're in your frost domain. These simulacrum traits are incredibly solid for PvE, as you know, simulacrum traits aren't available in PvP. So you're probably then wondering like what her matrices are going to be for the most part, and she comes with her own matrix set, and that's going to be with that 2-piece set. Was when switching from an ice weapon to an ice weapon, ice attack is increased by 15%, 18%, 21%, 25% for every level of this, you know, matrix for 10 seconds. And this effect works in the background, meaning that let's say if you had a team or a weapon set of Frigg's weapon, Tsubasa's weapon, and Meryl's weapon, if you were switching from Meryl's to Tsubasa, this thing would still activate. And then even more so, she has her other 4-piece set, which is when using frozen domain, enemies within the domain will take anywhere between 60 to 105% of ice attack of your ice attack as ice damage every second. Now, that's incredibly strong. So if you were going to use her as your main character, then eventually, you don't have to get this right now, but eventually you could work towards this set. If this is like, you love her so much, you always want to use her, that's the set you're going to look for. But there are 2 other sets, Samir and Crow, that you could basically put on any DPS in the game, and they'll work pretty much, you know, just as well on Frigg, if not better on Frigg. Now, the first one is actually going to be, like we said, Crow, which increases damage to targets with less than 60% HP. This is just going to be strong because by the time you're using Frigg, eventually this is just going to ramp up. She's just going to start dealing tons of damage whenever she crits, because it's like less than 60% HP. That's easy to obtain. Like, that's it. You might as well nuke the enemy once you get to that point. And this will work on just about any DPS, but it'll work even better on Frigg because, like I said, she's a fast attacking unit. Then you have 2-piece Samir, which is your damage progressively increases by 1% upon hitting a target, and that stacks up to from 10 to 20 times and lasts for 1.5 seconds, but continuously refreshes itself. Sorry, I almost burped. So there's a ton of, you know, matrix options, and if you don't have that, then you can go for 3-piece Sobek. 3-piece Sobek is not bad for any of the DPSs for the most part, because its damage now increases by 6% all the way to 9 when for each enemy nearby. This is incredibly good for things like mobbing, you know, things like the Bygone Phantasm. So you can even use Sobek depending on the situation that you're in. And like I said before, if you were trying to figure out, you know, to future-proof your account, right, you can get Tsubasa, or if you already have Tsubasa, you're pretty much set, because again, her advancement 1 will continue to just buff Frigg's damage even more so because of Sharp Arrow, increasing damage by 5% for 15 seconds up to 3 stacks. Even more so when you get her at C6 or advancement 6, right? So again, that's just insane as it is. So she pairs incredibly well with Tsubasa. Because of that additional shadow damage, she even pairs incredibly well with Meryl at this moment. Now, are you always going to be pairing this with Meryl or, you know, Tsubasa? Probably not, but just thinking about global sake exclusively, then the answer is yes. As of right now, you're going to be pairing this with, you know, Frigg with Tsubasa and Meryl. Now, if you guys wanted to get into some of the actual characters that are still meta in China, we can go over that. You have Lin, who literally just came out, so we're not expecting this unit for any time soon because she literally just came out. She's still on banner, if I'm not mistaken, right? Now, this character is insane because she gets the Arboration element, which allows her to change her element based on the other 2 weapons that are a part of that 3-weapon set. She has an S-rank Shatter, S-rank Charge. She's going to be really good. We're not going to get into her right now because, again, it's going to be a while, but she would pair incredibly well with Frigg. And in fact, that's part of the meta team, which is the other unit, Sakifua, which is originally the only other character that had Ice Resonance. But if Frigg winds up getting Ice Resonance, that changes the entire game, like basically the entire way. Sakifua has a great Shatter, and honestly, that's just it. It's, you combine her as your Shatter character, you have Frigg as like your primary DPS, and then you have Lin as somebody who can continue to be on the field and continue to buff the rest of your team because of all her skills, all her abilities, and she has really good Shatter and Charge. Not to mention she can take advantage of Frigg's ability because she'll be turned into ice by that point. So again, that's really, really strong. So looking at the entire kit, if you were gonna pull for Frigg right now, you'd be future-proofing your ice team, right? Again, if you're free to play, you already pulled Nemesis, maybe you want to wait on this because eventually she will be put into these standard banners so you can get her in the future. But if you were to pull her now and you were to combine her with things like Tsubasa and Meryl, you'd be pretty good. Or if you can even combine her with maybe Coco Ritter, if you wanted to do it that way, because Coco Ritter also has her incredible charge. But basically, you'd be using Tsubasa to buff your damage, you'd be using Meryl as your main shatter, and then you'd be using Frigg as your main DPS. The only time that I would use Coco Ritter is for certain situations where maybe you don't need that additional shatter, which is like party play, but you need that additional charge rate so you can do more damage. That's really the only way that I think about that. But the ideal team that I would be thinking about in global right now would be Frigg, Tsubasa, and Meryl. Ideally though, to make that work, you would need Tsubasa at advancement 1, and then Frigg, you could actually use her straight out the gate for the most part because of Frozen Domain, and if she gets Ice Resonance, that's a big if, right? Even more so, but she'll be even better once you get her advancement 1. And then Meryl, if you're only using her as a shatter, advancement 1 is fine, but you don't really need to worry about, you know, that all too much because you're just using her as your shatter. Now, I was going to make this a little bit of a shorter video, kind of like all my other ones, but I feel like whenever we get new characters, you know, it would be in my best interest to talk to you guys about like the best ways to build this, you know, the best teams to go for, some of my opinions and stuff like that. So I feel like that's just it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully it was informative in some way, shape, or form. Just TLDR, Frigg, Tsubasa, Meryl is my ideal team. If you were going to build her, what matrices are you going for? You'd go for 3-piece Sobek if you don't have any of the SSRs. But if you did have any of the SSRs, you'd be going for 2-piece Crow, 2-piece Samir, and or if you really like Frigg that much, then you'd probably be going for, you know, maybe 4-piece Frigg. And that's just, you know, these are just my opinions. So anyway, thank you guys again for watching. Stay awesome, stay beautiful, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace. I'm out.